Hey guys, Ryan here. Tonight we set foot on a narrow, dew-kissed trail winding through soaring Andean peaks, where the promise of whispers carried on the wind guides us toward ancient secrets. As dawn breaks, golden light filters through mist that clings to jagged ridges, and you probably won't survive this fully awake, because by the end, you might be too cozy to stay conscious. The air tastes like faint mint and cold stone, and every breath feels as crisp as a fresh page in a leather-bound chronicle. If this feels right, show some love with a like, and subscribe if you're down for more nights like this. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments so we can dream together across time zones. This little mountain breeze might even carry echoes of long-gone footfalls under your pillow. Let the room fade to a soft glow, fire up the fan's gentle breeze, and drift with me into tonight's reverie. You trudge upward, each step squelching in the damp ground as ancient stones peek through tufts of grass. A chill tickles your ears, urging you to pull your cloak tighter, even though your backpack already threatens to reshape your spine. You lean on a rough-hewn walking stick, more for dramatic effect than real support, and listen for the distant rumble of loose rocks. Around you, the jagged horizon glows in buttery hues, like someone smeared a dream across the sky. Beneath your hand, the quipu bundle feels unexpectedly familiar, bristling with braided cotton cords, knotted in sequences that might remind you of a knitter's abandoned scarf. Actually, the Incas maintained over 25,000 miles of roads connecting their empire, winding through these same ridges, so you're technically just following a very slow workout plan they set a few centuries ago. Mainstream fact: the Inca Empire spanned from modern Colombia down to Chile by the early 16th century, all thanks to that web of roads and mountain bridges that often doubled as the world's trickiest fitness trail. You pause to catch your breath, squinting at a weathered milestone stone carved by Quechua artisans. Its glyphs are faded but still whisper provenance, built under Tupac Inca Yupanqui. There's a fringe tidbit tucked in local lore that some quipu keepers used knotting patterns to record epic poems, like prehistoric Twitter threads of heroic deeds, though most scholars shrug and say there's no hard evidence. Historians still argue whether quipu were simply numeric ledgers or if they secretly encoded entire narratives in color and knot. A breeze swoops down the valley, scattering handfuls of silver grass that shimmer like tiny comets. You shift your pack, and wince as a knot rubs against your neck, wishing you'd invested in a better fitness tracker than these lumpy bundles. The quipu rests against your chest, a curious tangle of yellows, blacks, and reds. Each hue carries meaning, they say, though some chord shades now resemble a toddler's art project more than an imperial record. Your guide, a veteran keeper named Mama Huayra, glances back with a knowing smile. "Step lightly," she murmurs, voice soft enough to blend into the mist. "These paths remember every footstep." You imagine the countless Chuzki runners, Khalit couriers, passing here at a jog, bundles strapped tight, water skin slapping their waists like a rebellious pet. Modern aside, if only those runners had today's hydration packs, they'd never have to improvise with soggy moss. As you round a bend, the trail narrows to a ledge barely wider than your boots. Below, a chasm yawns, mist swirls at its bottom like a lazy river of clouds, and you resist the urge to lean out for a dramatic selfie. Instagram can wait until you're safely down. You press your hand to a mossy wall, feeling life pulsing beneath your fingertips, as if the mountain itself were breathing through ancient pores. A mainstream fact tickles your mind: llamas and alpacas served as pack animals, carrying quipu bundles and provisions. Their sure-footedness on these heights remains unmatched. Even your latest cross-strainer shoes can't claim that resume. Fringe tidbit: some villagers whisper that when a keeper dies, their final quipu is buried with them, so the knots can guide their spirit home, though most archaeologists haven't found conclusive burials to prove it. Historians still argue whether these burial quipus were practical archives or mystical offerings. You trudge onward, the altitude pressing at your chest like a polite but persistent librarian. Each breath is a whisper of effort, reminding you that you're not exactly acclimated to 12,000 feet. You silently promise yourself fewer late-night snacks next time. Your guide tips a small stone into her pouch, an offering to the mountain god Apu, while you wonder if you forgot to charge your headlamp. The sun climbs higher, and the first birds, bright red tanagers, begin their morning chatter, weaving through craggy outcrops. Their song feels oddly like a ringtone you once hated, but here it softens into a lullaby. The world below is still asleep, or so you hope, because your snoring would echo for miles if you nodded off upright. You adjust the straps on your pack again, just as you have a dozen times, and remember why you volunteered for this, to understand how messages traveled faster than gossip in a modern office. Every knot you'll study carries census counts, tribute quotas, and perhaps even poetic odes to victory. Mainstream fact: Quipu technicians, called quipucamayocs, underwent years of training in Cusco, mastering knot types and numeric bases up to 20. Fringe tidbit: some fringe theorists propose Quipu formed an early binary code, 2 knot styles representing on-off signals, though serious coding historians raise skeptical eyebrows. Historians still argue whether quipucamayocs transmitted messages orally while reading the knots or relied solely on tactile memory. As you crest the ridge, the valley unfurls below like a vast tapestry, terraced fields patchworked in green and gold. You pause, inhaling deeply, feeling a crescendo of pride and relief. Soon, you'll bundle cords, whisper secrets, and partake in a ritual older than most civilizations. Your heart thumps in time with the distant rush of a waterfall, a natural percussion loop that soothes and energizes you at once. And here, on this quiet spine of the world, you sense that every knot you tie and every step you take ties you to a history both grand and intimate, whispering down through centuries to meet you here, at dawn. You let your fingers drift along the quipu's braided cotton strands, noticing how each cord feels surprisingly warm from body heat, like a cluster of sleepy caterpillars nestled against your chest. The fibers tickle the pads of your fingers as you tease apart a handful of cords, each dyed in muted earth tones, deep ochre, charcoal black, and a pale cream that catches the lamplight in curious ways. The scent of raw cotton and a faint whiff of the llama fur used in earlier quipus mingles in your nostrils, grounding you in this moment. You imagine a modern spreadsheet program with tiny, tactile cells you could actually feel, no cursor required, and you smirk at the absurd convenience. These cords aren't just decorative, they form the official record system of the Inca Empire. Each quipu bundle could represent census data, tribute tallies, and agricultural yields for entire provinces. Mainstream fact: Quipu used a base 10 system with different knot types, long knots for units, figure-8 knots for tens, and isolated single knots for higher orders, woven together to encode precise numerical values. You can practically hear the echo of quipucamayocs chanting numbers as they looped and unlooped chords in the cool pre-dawn air. You wiggle a knotted section under your thumb, marveling at its complexity. Fringe tidbit: a few quipu discovered in the high jungles include tiny pendants of vegetable fiber thought to commemorate lunar eclipses, almost like prehistoric mood rings marking cosmic events. You'd probably lose that in an airline overhead bin, but here it has sacred value. Historians still argue whether those pendants were mnemonic keys for astronomical data or simply decorative tokens passed down through generations. You shift the quipu so that a secondary bundle fans out like the spokes of an ancient bicycle wheel, if bicycles had ever been invented here. A modern aside trips off your tongue: imagine if you accidentally tangled your earbuds like this every morning, bedtime storytelling would never stand a chance. Your host voice hums softly, inviting you deeper into the tactile wonder. Somewhere in the palace workshops, apprentice keepers untangled their first cords, cursed under their breath, and probably wished for a YouTube tutorial with rewind buttons. Tracing a single strand, you notice that the main primary cord runs straight, acting like a spine, with subsidiary cords branching off at consistent intervals. These offshoots are grouped in clusters, some close together, others spaced wide apart, each grouping marking a different category: military levies, llama herds, or even ceremonial feasts. Mainstream fact: quipu bundles often had up to 200 subsidiary cords, and specialists could read them blindfolded, relying purely on touch. You chuckle at your own clumsiness, imagining tying more knots than a toddler plays with shoelaces. You slide your thumb along a cord dyed in rich crimson, half believing it to pulse with significance. That red strand, scholars say, might denote gold production figures from Potosí's mines, whispering tales of riches hauled down treacherous slopes. Or it could be a tribute of colored corn grown in sacred terraces. Historians still argue whether color coding always matched specific resources or if local regions improvised their own schemes. The quipu feels alive under your hand, as if it contains a heartbeat of the empire itself, softly reminding you of those long-lost heartbeats. At the end of each subsidiary cord, you find a cluster of overhand knots, some evenly spaced, others tight against the cord's end. You count them like dots on a die, a trio here, a quintet there. Fringe tidbit: certain quipu show evidence of knot inversions, where a knot points upward instead of downward, possibly to flag exceptions or errors, like prehistoric sticky notes hinting, "Oops, we need to double-check this." Those inversions spark debates. Were they intentional corrections or accidental slips by tired keepers? Historians still argue whether knot orientation was standardized or left to individual quipu makers. A sudden breeze rustles through the sheltering palms of a nearby grove, and you note the contrast. Inca archives stored in a humid jungle must have looked very different than those in the chilly highlands. You flick a stray hair from your face, thinking about how quipucamayocs built drying racks in Cusco to preserve cords. Modern aside, it's like switching between your bedroom thermostat and a sauna, definitely a thermostat you'd want on the mildly nostalgic rather than tropical blast. You lean in closer, ear grazing the cotton, half expecting to hear whispered voices from centuries past. Though recent experiments with 3D imaging let archaeologists reconstruct some quipu patterns, no one's reproduced the feeling of running your fingertips along those faded cords. Mainstream fact: the largest known quipu, preserved in the National Museum of Anthropology in Lima, spans over 6 feet in length and contains more than 800 knots. That's roughly equivalent to memorizing the phone book of a small village, blindfolded. You pause, lips curling into a soft smile. The quipu's simplicity betrays its profound sophistication. It's a medium that sits at the intersection of art, administration, and storytelling, all woven into cotton strands so accessible you could mistake them for hair ties. Fringe tidbit: a few travelers in the 19th century reported quipu bundles repurposed as makeshift jump ropes or pet toys, hardly the reverent treatment quipucamayocs might have intended. Yet somehow, the tangible humanity of these cords remains intact. Finally, you gather the strands and secure them with a simple overhand knot, capturing a moment in time that feels as delicate as breath. You let the bundle rest against your palm, awed by how a handful of cords could stitch together an empire's daily heartbeat. You grind your teeth together in mock frustration. Why couldn't Google Sheets have been around then? And then you laugh softly, the sound cushioned by the mountain valley's echo. You're ready to move on, but the memory of these braided strands will linger, nudging you to appreciate how record-keeping once meant more than tapping keys on a backlit screen. You slip through a narrow stone doorway, the torchlight flickering against slick walls draped with damp, emerald moss. The air is thick with incense smoke, sweet straw and pine resin muddling into your nostrils, and each step echoes with a muted thud on flagstones worn smooth by countless feet. You swallow a nervous gulp, reminded of the quipu bundle still tucked under your arm, and wonder if these hidden shrines ever hosted noisy birthday parties. Spoiler: they did not. Torches line the chamber, their tongues of flame dancing like sleepy fireflies. You find yourself in a vaulted hall where low wooden benches flank an altar strewn with smaller quipu samples. Here, the empire's future record keepers, girls and boys who've just turned 10, gather in humble robes dyed in earthy reds and browns. A hush falls over the room as you step forward, stirring a cloud of dust motes that sparkle like gold flecks in the lamplight. You're not exactly inconspicuous, but the apprentices merely glance your way before returning to their knots. A wizened instructor, his face lined with the creases of 100-knot sequences, gestures for you to join a bench. You settle next to a wiry boy named Tupac and a cheerful girl called Mayu, each cradling a short cord bundle in their laps. You already know that quipucamayocs, the elite knot masters, often began training as children, sometimes as early as 8, to master the intricacies of the system. Mainstream fact: formal apprenticeship programs lasted up to 5 years, during which novices memorized dozens of knot techniques and color codes under the relentless watch of senior keepers. Mayu's fingers move in a practiced rhythm, looping strands over and under with the confidence of someone who has spent half her life whispering to cords. You reach out, attempting to mimic her motion, only to fumble the strand, twisting it into a hopeless tangle. A soft snicker escapes from Tupac, and you offer him a sheepish grin. He responds with a conspiratorial wink, as if to say, "Don't worry, my first torches always went out, too." The instructor strides down the row, inspecting each learner's work. He pauses at your bundle, eyes narrowing as he spots a crooked knot. You reset your spine and feign nonchalance, though your palms are clammy enough to dampen the cotton cords. He murmurs something in Quechua, probably advising you to consider knitting slippers instead, and moves on. You exhale a shaky breath, thankful that the prenector of Quipu seems more forgiving than your old 4th grade math teacher. As Mayu and Tupac work, you notice that each apprentice's Quipu sample is color-coded differently. Some vibrant cerulean threads appear almost like ocean waves trapped in cotton, while others boast a sunlit saffron hue that feels too cheerful for a quiet shrine. These color choices aren't simply aesthetic, they signal what type of data the apprentice is learning: census figures, agricultural yield, or even ritual schedules. You frown as you ponder whether modern interns with Excel spreadsheets ever felt such color-coded pressure. Spoiler, they really did. You lean in closer to observe Mayu's handiwork. Her knots sit in neat rows like tiny, obedient soldiers, each twist conveying a number, a name, or a date. You attempt to name the knot types aloud: long knot, figure-8 knot, single knot, and Mayu huffs a laugh. Practice, not theatrics, she teases, her voice a soft murmur that blends into the shrine's hush. You feel oddly proud to have elicited genuine amusement from a 10-year-old master in training. The instructor calls the apprentices forward one by one to recite their sequences. Tupac steps up, his palms steady despite the torchlight's jitter, rattling off numbers and categories as he runs his fingers along the chords. You're struck by the fluidity of his voice, a blend of confidence and reverence. Mainstream fact: quipucamayocs often recited Quipu data aloud during festivals, reinforcing memorization and ensuring communal accuracy. You imagine the entire city of Cusco hushed as each knot's meaning floats over the plaza, a dramatic PowerPoint presentation without the projector or the coffee addiction. After Tupac, it's your turn. You stand, feeling the weight of dozens of attentive gazes. Your throat tightens as you touch the knotted chords, hesitating. You clear your throat, channeling your best scholarly tone, and begin. 3 knots on the first chord, indicating 3 llamas. Your voice wobbles at first, but steadies as you progress. You nearly trip over a twig knot meant to mark a festival date, but you recover, tacking on a snappy remark about llama yoga poses that draws gentle laughter. You notice the instructor's stern expression soften, either he's amused or impressed that you managed to weave humor into a numerical recitation. With your recital done, the instructor nods curtly and returns you to your bench. A torch guttering at the far end paints flickering shadows that resemble dancing Quipu knots on the walls. You catch Mayu's eye, and she gives you a thumbs up, clearly impressed that you pronounced figure-8 knot without spitting. You settle back onto your bench, relieved that your debut wasn't a total disaster, and marvel at how something as simple as chords and knots can command such disciplined loyalty. You lean back against the cool stone, feeling the rough surface press through your tunic. Somewhere in the shrine's silence, you swear you hear the faint ratchet of knots tightening. Maybe it's your imagination, or maybe the walls themselves bear witness to the countless sequences learned here. You close your eyes for a moment, tasting the incense and torch soot as if they were vintage wine, acquired taste, but strangely comforting once you appreciate the nuances. Modern aside, if YouTube had existed, this apprenticeship would have its own knot tutorial playlist, complete with ASMR unboxing of cotton bundles, complete with whispered commentary about knot tension. You stifle a chuckle at the thought of a Spanish chronicler's head exploding at the phrase ASMR. Time drifts by almost imperceptibly until the instructor signals the end of the session. Apprentices pack their Quipu samples into palmetto-woven satchels, their movements fluid, as if chords are as familiar to them as breathing. You wrap your own sample carefully, smoothing stray fibers, and slip it into your bag. The apprentices rise silently, extinguishing torches with practiced efficiency, and a hush falls as darkness reclaims the chamber. You follow Tupac and Mayu out into the night. The torchlit corridor gives way to a star-drenched courtyard, where a gentle breeze rustles overgrown laurels. You blink against the sudden chill, grateful for the soft night air free of knot-tying pressure. Behind you, the hidden shrine stands silent, its lessons carved into your memory like intricate loops and twists waiting to be unraveled. As you stroll back toward the main trail, you feel the smooth wood of your walking stick under your palm. You glance skyward, tracking the Southern Cross, a constellation the Quipu astronomers might have charted alongside their numeric data. You tuck a loose lock of hair behind your ear and reflect on how apprenticeship isn't just about mastering techniques, but about inheriting a legacy spun from cotton and faith. And just like that, you step out of the whispered hush of the shrine, carrying with you not just a bag of knotted cords, but a deeper sense of connection to every apprentice who ever learned to read the language of knots under torchlight. You break camp before first light, the air still a bruise-colored hush around you, and follow Mama Huayra down a zigzagging path where the mountain yawns into a deeper valley. Before long, she signals ahead, and you glimpse a lone figure, a Chuzki runner, standing like a silent sentinel on a rocky outcrop. His Quipu bundle is tucked into a woven sash at his hip, and he watches you with the calm intensity of someone accustomed to life in perpetual motion. You draw in a lungful of thin air and step forward, ready to join this relay of wind-blown messengers. The Chuzki offers a curt nod, then presses the Quipu into your hand. Its cords, now crisper after last night's cool shrine, bundle into a neat coil that fits almost snugly against your palm. You can't help but marvel at how civilization's mail system once fit in one gloved hand, no stamps required. Modern aside, this beats waiting for Amazon Prime in a city that never sleeps, though missing a package here might mean missing an entire census update. With the Quipu secured, you hunch forward, channeling your inner athlete. The runner beside you, a lean youth named Chiri, takes off in long, fluid strides, feet barely kissing the ground. You jog after him, wobbling like an inflatable tube man in a light breeze, your heart pounding in a rhythm that could double as a drumbeat for the local festival. A stray rock rolls under your boot, and you stumble, nearly gifting your Quipu to the valley below. Nice catch, Chiri laughs softly, as if missing a step on these cliffs were a mild fashion faux pas. You push forward, feeling the mountain wind whip hair and cloth into a tangle. The path narrows to a mere ledge, and you grip the rock face with one hand, steadying yourself as Chiri vaults ahead without breaking stride. You feel the Quipu bumping against your ribs with each breath, a constant reminder of the bundle you carry, and that dropping it would likely earn you an impromptu push into the abyss. Actually, the Inca executed bungling couriers for lost messages, but let's assume they reserved that punishment for chronic offenders, not enthusiastic YouTubers. Fringe tidbit, some Chuzki are rumored to have carried coca leaves in their Quipu bundles, chewing them mid-run to stave off fatigue and altitude sickness, essentially prehistoric energy gels, though you still haven't figured out how to chew and tie knots at the same time. Historians still argue whether coca chewing was formally sanctioned or merely a personal hack whispered among runners. You round a bend, and the valley opens into a bowl of terraced fields, mist rising like a slow perfume. The tambos ahead glows as a cluster of stone huts perched on a shelf of the mountain, your next handoff point. Chiri slows, panting lightly, and you ease your shoulders, grateful your ankles held up. You extend the Quipu, and he snatches it with practiced efficiency, fingers dancing along the primary cord. In a flash, he slips a fresh Quipu from his sash into your grasp, all while humming a low tune that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby version of an Andean war chant. You curse your lack of coordination. Juggling bundles at high altitude feels like patting your head and rubbing your stomach, only with more risk of an agile llama outpacing you. The new Quipu nestles against your hip, its cords trailing like eager recruits ready for inspection. You tuck one arm around it, testing the weight, lighter than you expected, heavier than an artist's sketch pad. Chiri grins and darts ahead, you follow, thinking you've got the hang of it, until your foot slips on a patch of gravel. You catch yourself with a quick hop, nearly yelping but opting for a dignified grunt. Joke one, you decide that at least if you fall, the Quipu might break your fall, but probably not in a helpful way. As you press on, the path becomes steeper, carved into the rock face like a precarious ribbon. Wind gusts here threaten to snatch the Quipu from your grip, and you loop your arm through the bundle's sash to secure it. You imagine a boardroom scenario. Excuse me, sir, can you resend that PowerPoint? My folder slipped into the Grand Canyon. Chiri glances back, offering a thumbs up and a wink. You're officially Chasky approved. The trail dips into a slender gorge, walls rising on either side like stone cathedral aisles. Sunlight slants through breaks overhead, spotlighting swirling dust motes. You breathe in the warmth on your face and almost forget the dizzying drop beside you. Almost. Fringe tidbit: local tales speak of Chuzki who intentionally ran barefoot over hot stones to prove their dedication, enduring searing souls in silent ritual endurance tests, though some scholars suspect these are just embellished tales told around communal fires. You emerge from the gorge coughing lightly, quipu draped across your back like a monkey clinging to a tree. You wipe sweat from your brow and recall the smooth bench you sat on in the apprenticeship shrine. Nothing soft here but the wind's cushion. Chiri slows at the next tambos, where attendants gesture you into a low clearing bordered by aromatic rosemary bushes. They offer you a bowl of maize porridge spiced with chili flakes, an Inca energy bar, if you will. You sip carefully, hoping not to embarrass yourself with a mouthful of chili-induced hiccups. Joke 2, you silently vow to duel any bus driver who complains about long routes after this trek. After a brief rest, you grasp the quipu bundle once more, savoring the contrast between the cool metal edge of the cooking pot and the warm cotton cords. The attendants ladle fresh water into goods, and you splash cool liquid on your face, the shock of refreshment tingling like tiny percussion instruments across your skin. Modern aside, you note that hydration stations here have zero branding, though imagine if Gucci Tambo H2O were a thing. You'd probably wince at the irony of luxury water in a stone hut. You stand, shoulders squared, ready for your next leg. The quipu tugs against you, a gentle reminder of your duty. You glance at Chiri, he's gone already, a red blur against the green terraces. With a deep breath, you push off, landing in a runner's stride that's unsteady but determined. The world narrows to wind in your ears, boots thudding, and the cotton cords brushing your side in a rhythmic lullaby. Your chest swells, exhilaration mixed with relief that you haven't face-planted yet. You crest the next ridge, and the path flattens into a wide plateau that overlooks a shimmering glacial lake. You pause, listening to your heartbeat settle into a steady hum. In the distance, another runner appears, a silhouette against dawn's afterglow. You tighten your grip, ready to pass the quipu like a baton in a race that spans an empire. As you slow, nearly in sync, you extend the bundle, and with a swift, practiced motion, you release it. The cords swirl between you like a colorful galaxy collapsing into a new orbit. You watch your runner vanish around a bend, quipu bobbing at his side, and you stand alone with empty hands. The wind carries his figure away until he's nothing but a dot against sunlit rock. You exhale, a soft breath that sounds like a contented sigh, and feel the echo of every footstep, every heartbeat, every whispered knot. Now the next leg is yours, new paths, fresh heights, more wind-whipped whispers waiting to be delivered. You secure your cloak, tighten your laces, and step forward into the open sky of another mountain corridor, the quipu's silent story trailing behind you like a promise. You slip off your sandals at the edge of a circular stone platform bathed in silver moonlight, where a half-dozen keepers kneel around low wooden tables strewn with dyed fibers. The air hums with the soft rustle of cotton strands and the distant lap of mountain water against carved stone troughs. This midnight crafting circle feels more like an intimate backstage pass to imperial record-keeping than the sleepy ASMR session you half expected. You settle onto a woven mat, fingers already itching to join the ritual. A low chant rises in Quechua, voices weaving in and out like the cords you're about to twist. The lead keeper, a woman called Nusta, holds up a cluster of threads, vibrant crimson cochineal, deep indigo from native lupin flowers, and a golden yellow derived from toasted apamui juice. Mainstream fact: Inca dyers used natural pigments, cochineal insects, plant roots, and mineral oxides to achieve a dozen distinct cord colors, each signaling a specific category of data or social rank. You lean forward, inhaling the tang of vinegar and roasting bark, and marvel at how these earthy scents could double as mountain cologne. Nusta hands you a bundle of undyed cotton, still fluffy and unformed. You run your fingers through it, half expecting the fibers to tickle like a playful kitten. You try it, twirling the spindle with 2 fingers, the yarn flies off in a wild spiral, landing in your lap like a startled bird. Joke 1, you think that if this were a pottery class, you'd be covered in clay instead of tangled cord. A hush falls as the keepers bow their heads, offering silent gratitude to Mama Kocha, the sea mother whose waters nurtured the cotton fields. You join the gesture, tracing a fingertip across a carved symbol on the platform's edge, a spiral reminiscent of a coiled quipu cord. Fringe tidbit: some fringe storytellers claim these spirals mapped out lunar phases, enabling cord weavers to align their dyes with moon cycles, though no calendrical quipu has yet confirmed the practice. Historians still argue whether quipu production was synchronized with astronomical events or followed a more practical, year-round schedule. Nuster demonstrates the two-ply twist, pinching two single strands and rolling them together until they spiral into a sturdy cord. Your hands falter at first, the fibers unwind and slip through your grasp like mischievous ghosts, until Nuster gently guides your fingers, murmuring encouragement. You feel a thrill when the threads finally click into place, forming a neat ply that gleams in the torchlight. It's surprisingly meditative, each twist echoing the heartbeat of the mountains. To your left, a keeper named Amaru dips strands into a shallow clay bowl of indigo dye. The threads emerge a mottled blue, reminiscent of a dusk sky over Lake Titicaca. You follow suit, slipping your spun cord into a dye vat, then lifting it back out to let droplets scatter like stars on the stone floor. Mainstream fact: Inca artisans timed their immersions carefully, sometimes counting pulses against a low drumbeat to maintain consistent color saturation. You imagine an Inca Spotify playlist titled Midnight Dye Jams, perfect for quipu vibes. As the dyed cords rest on narrow wooden racks, Nuster begins arranging them into color sequences on a fresh primary cord. She aligns crimson next to ochre, then black, creating a rainbow pattern that feels more art installation than administrative tool. You lean in, spotting minute variations. One crimson is slightly fainter, hinting at a smaller cochineal harvest that season. Fringe tidbit: whispered village tales say that single off-shade strands were deliberately included as mood markers, capturing the weaver's emotion that night, although serious textile archaeologists remain unconvinced. Historians still argue whether color inconsistencies were intentional metadata or simply the quirks of natural dyeing. You reach for the primary cord, heart fluttering as you tie your first subsidiary. Your knot is uneven, one loop too tight, another too loose. Nuster gives you a conspiratorial grin and taps your knot gently, adjusting it like a jeweler setting a precious stone. Even the sun occasionally misaligns, she whispers. You suppress a grin, thinking how rare it is to receive code review so softly. The circle falls silent again as drums begin, soft taps on hollow goods echo in the night. The rhythm quickens, and apprentices rise, dancing in a slow, ceremonial circle around the crafters. You're invited to stand and join. You rise, wobbling like a newborn llama finding its legs. Joke 2: you suspect your dance would be more at home in a slapstick comedy than an Andean rite, but the keepers clap encouragingly anyway. The drums mimic that heartbeat knot, a rhythmic pattern once celebrated with feasting, though only rarely recorded in texts. After the dance, you return to your cord. Nuster nods, signaling you to tie a series of figure-8 knots spaced in clusters of 7, representing 7 highland provinces tasked with transporting maize. Mainstream fact: quipucamayocs use knot placement, type, and spacing as a three-dimensional matrix, allowing them to encode multi-layered data on a single cord. Your fingers move more confidently now, knots emerging evenly as if guided by muscle memory. A faint wind tugs at the torches, flickering the shadows into shapes that resemble dancing knots on the walls, an unintended visual aid for your sleepy mind. You smile at the cosmic humor, ancient walls celebrating their own record-keeping invention. The keepers exchange low whispers, comparing dye recipes and knot sequences. You lean in, catching fragments: last season's cochineal bloom, miscount on the northern census. The debate is hushed but intense, reminding you that quipu crafting was as much a living dialogue as a static ledger. You remember your office's last budget meeting and shudder at how loud it was. Nuster holds up your completed cord, bright, precise, and surprisingly supple. It hangs like a miniature tapestry of the Empire's heartbeat. She cuts the primary cord, tying a final stopper knot, and hands it to you with ceremonious dignity. You cradle it reverently, more in awe of the human connections woven into these threads than the data they encode. Modern aside, you consider how your own to-do lists could feel richer if crafted in vibrant yarn instead of scribbled on recycled paper. You imagine quilting your next grocery list, complete with color-coded urgency levels. Joke 3. You mentally draft a marketing slogan, get knotted, productivity you can pet. The circle disperses as torches gutter low, and you gather your tools, spindle, dye pot, and half-finished yarn scraps. The remaining keepers offer you a small cup of maize beer, chicha, its sweetness balanced by a slight tang from fermented quinoa. You sip slowly, letting the warmth spread through your chest. As you tuck the newly crafted cord into your pack, you realize midnight has slipped away. The sky is paler now, hinting at dawn's approach. The crafting circle dissolves into a line of silhouettes departing along a narrow ridge, each carrying fresh quipu threads destined for distant storehouses. You stand a moment longer, heart full, mind quiet. This hands-on communion has transformed cotton strands into living memory. Now, as you step back onto the trail with your spindle swinging at your side and your pack softer against your shoulders, the mountain seems to hum a lullaby composed of woven color and whispered knots, an echo you'll carry long after sleep takes you. You settle onto a low stone bench inside a circular tambo hall where the morning light filters through lattice windows, casting latticed patterns across rows of quipu bundles hanging like silent mobiles. Mama Huayra hands you a fresh primary cord, smooth, bleached cotton that smells faintly of sun-warmed straw, and gestures for you to untie the final stopper knot from last night's crafting. You slide your fingers along the cord's length, feeling the tension in each twist as if you're about to decipher the empire's heartbeat itself. A veteran quipucamayoc named Huaka steps forward, his robes dusted with earthen pigments from yesterday's dye work, a callback to the midnight crafting circle where you learn to spin vibrant threads. He pats your shoulder, then lifts a ribbon-thin cord with 2 figure-8 knots stacked tightly. This, he murmurs in Quechua softened by centuries of tradition, means 20 sacks of maize. He taps the knots gently, and you feel the data vibrate against your palm, like tiny story seeds begging to sprout. Mainstream fact, the Inca Quipu system employed a base 10 positional notation where knot types, long knots for units, figure-8 knots for tens, and clustered single knots for hundreds, were arranged vertically to signify place value, enabling accurate record-keeping for census and tribute across provinces. You trace a vertical line of knots with your finger, imagining each cluster as a digital cell in a spreadsheet that you can smell, taste, and touch. You frown at your own bundle. So if I wanted to record the population of a small village, say, 137 souls, I'd tie 1 single knot, then 3 figure-8s, then 7 long knots. Huaka nods, his eyes twinkling like lantern embers. You raise an eyebrow, modern aside, this beats manually typing numbers into an archaic calculator that crashes the moment you hit 132. Joke 1, you think about how smug you'd feel telling your tax preparer you've got your numbers stored in cotton instead of on a glitchy PDF. As you attempt the knot sequence, your fingers stumble. The cord buckles under your fumbling grip, knots bunching too close. Huaka crouches beside you, his hand steady as he guides your loops, whispering, tight, but not too tight, like threading a needle with mountain humidity. You chuckle, imagining soggy spreadsheets, then fix your knot tension with newfound confidence. A tray of small quipu samples is passed around, each one color-coded and numbered. You pick up a crimson highlighted cord labeled Silver Mines and not for figure-8s to denote for major mining districts supplying the royal treasury. Fringe tidbit, a few rare quipu unearthed near Cerro Rico include tiny silver dust residues on the crimson threads, suggesting some keepers sprinkled or into their cords as a literal seal of authenticity, like prehistoric watermarking. You blink, the idea of a literal watermark tickles your imagination. Historians still argue whether those mineral flecks were intentional anti-forgery measures or mere byproducts of dusty storage. You move down the line of cords, carefully tying knots to represent llama herds, salt flats, and even the number of textiles woven in Cusco's workshops. Each section you complete feels like you're sculpting data in mid-air. Your mind drifts back to the echoing shrines where apprentices recited sequences by torchlight. Now, you're the one voicing the numbers aloud, 7, hundreds of textiles, 2, thousands of liters of chicha. Each phrase floats into the rafters, interacting with the sanctuary's lingering incense haze. Modern aside, you reflect on how satisfying it would be if your email inbox let you tug on threads to categorize messages. Whenever someone CCs you, you just tie a knot. Think of the productivity vlog possibilities. Joke 2. You wonder if Office 365 would ever include a Quipu mode, complete with ambient llama bleats when you hit save. Huaka then demonstrates how knot placement on the subsidiary chords communicate subcategories. Knots nearer the primary chord represent principal figures, like the total tribute due, while those farther out indicate paid installments. You squint at your own work, spacing knots slowly to mimic his pattern. Mainstream fact: Quipu keepers often arrange subsidiary chords at precise angles, 20 degrees apart, to denote administrative districts, effectively mapping numerical and geographic data in 3 dimensions. Your finger grazes a knot set slightly off angle, and you correct it with surgical attention. Fringe tidbit: some colonial-era chronicles claim that quipucamayocs used whispered songs to recall complex sequences, turning knot data into mnemonic melodies, though later scholars dismiss these as fanciful exaggerations. You try humming a gentle tune to anchor your memory of the census figures, feeling like an ASMR DJ remixing statistics. Historians still argue whether oral melodies formed an official mnemonic system or if they were spontaneous personal aids. A breeze drifts through the open window, carrying the scent of eucalyptus from distant plains, a stark contrast to the incense-warmed hall. You shift, feeling the cord strands slip against your wrists, and marvel at how natural materials outlast modern plastics. Your Quipu bundle, now thick with new knots, weighs pleasantly against your side. Huaka nods approvingly and presents you with a final challenge: encode an imperial decree detailing a remittance of 2,046 llamas and 5,312 baskets of maize. You inhale, steady your pulse, and set to work. Your mind races through knot types and calculations: 1 single knot for 2000s, 0 for hundreds, for figure eights for tens, 6 long knots for units. You tie each knot deliberately, murmuring the values as you go. Then you switch to the maize chord: 5,000s, 300s, 110s, 2 units, each knot stacking like bricks in a quiet edifice of record keeping. As you finish, you let out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. The decree is complete, and your chord stands proud, a miniature time capsule of imperial logistics. You hold it up, imagining the Sapa Inca tapping the knots with a golden stylus, confirming every tribute detail. Joke 3. You think how horrifying it would be if the president of your club demanded tribute in knitted socks instead of cash, at least those expire after wash cycles. Huaka steps back and surveys your work. He nods, then produces a small, feather-tipped stylus, used by keepers to mark corrections on paracord-style Quipu, and touches a stray loop, tightening it to perfection. You nod in gratitude, aware that this gentle tutoring surpasses any YouTube tutorials. Like and subscribe prompts. Mama Huayra appears with a woven basket of toasted maize kernels and passes you a handful. You crunch a few as your reward, the kernel's salty flavor anchoring you in the present. You glance at your bundle, now bursting with knots that quantify an empire's heartbeat. Historians still argue whether built-in verification knots formed part of an official Quipu audit system or if they were isolated innovations by eccentric keepers. You stand, stretching your back as the tambo's walls absorb a final reverent echo of your murmured numbers. The sun climbs higher, illuminating dust particles motes that dance like confetti caught in a slow-motion celebration of your accomplishment. You secure your bag, adjust your cloak, and step back onto the trail, the decree cord swaying gently at your side, a testament to a system that balanced precision and artistry in every twist. You descend into a broad valley where twin ridges form natural amphitheaters, their stone walls curving around you like attentive onlookers. Every footstep echoes twice, then fades into a soft sigh that clings to the air. You pause on a flat terrace hewn into the rock, lean your ear against an ancient stone, and imagine your whispered Quipu knots resonating like secret Morse code across the chasm. The mist curls around your ankles, carrying shards of distant laughter, maybe from other Chuzki, maybe just the wind playing tricks. Your guide, Mama Huayra, crouches beside you and taps the stone with a knuckle, producing a hollow tone that reverberates down the valley's spine. Here, she whispers, voice magnified by the natural acoustics, messages travel farther than a llama's bray. You lean in closer, feeling the quipu bundle warm against your cheek as though it, too, is straining to catch the echo. Mainstream fact: the Incas built tambos and relay stations at strategic points, often in echo-rich valleys, to amplify runners' voice announcements, ensuring that the arrival of a chusqui heralded imperial decrees across great distances without shouting. You imagine a runner whispering, then hearing his own words bounce back like an obedient parrot, saving precious breath during a grueling descent. You gently tap a knot-laden cord against the stone and listen: thump, echo, thump, echo. The repetition is hypnotic, and you find yourself counting beats instead of knots. Modern aside, it's the world's first ASMR, Inca style, minus the whispering YouTube host and plus a lot more altitude. Joke 1. You wonder if ASMR fans would trade their fluffy pillows for sandstone echoes any day. A cool breeze sweeps down, rattling your cloak and scattering tufts of grass. You reposition the quipu, letting a few subsidiary chords fan out across the stone's surface. You press your palm to the primary chord and murmur a dozen Spanish numbers, just to see if the echo will repeat them in Quechua. It doesn't, but for a moment the valley feels alive, as if every knot you touched gained a second voice. Fringe tidbit: local legend holds that certain quipu keepers harnessed these echo points to read quipu by sound, tapping knots in rapid sequences and interpreting the resulting echoes like an acoustic code, though no archaeological record confirms widespread practice. Historians still argue whether such auditory knot reading ever formed a formal communication technique or remained the stuff of myth. You rise and step to the center of the terrace, quipu secured at your side. You clear your throat and whisper the single word "huillac" into the void. That's the Quechua term for boundary marker, and the echo returns it like a playful ghost greeting its own name. You laugh softly. The valley rewards you with 3 mirror echoes, almost as if it's applauding your effort. Joke 2. You half expect a panel of stone judges to rise and nod in approval, awarding you best whispered performance. Walking to the far edge, you note ancient Inca survey stones set at regular intervals, markers that guided builders as they carved terraces and roads. You imagine quipucamayocs consulting these stones, whispering knot codes to confirm the number of terraces needed for maize cultivation below. Mainstream fact: Inca engineers leveraged natural acoustics to coordinate construction across vast sites, sometimes using echo points to synchronize work crews without messengers. You tap a survey stone, listening to the hollow reply, your own private baton in a centuries-old relay. The valley floor slopes gently into a patchwork of fields, their neat rows of maize and potatoes laid out like a woven tapestry. From this perch, you see tiny figures tending crops, unaware that the valley's acoustics once carried the emperor's fiscal orders while they planted kernels. You press the quipu against your heart, grateful that the chords carried more than numbers, they carried authority veiled in quiet hum. Fringe tidbit: some chroniclers claimed that quipu bundles themselves were dipped in clay and tapped for tone testing, each chord's unique pitch indicating category, like prehistoric musical instruments sorted by sound, not sight, though most textile experts dismiss this as fanciful. Historians still argue whether quipu tonality formed a meaningful part of record verification or if it simply inspired poetic analogies. You sit on a low stone bench flanked by 2 carved sculptures of puma heads, their mouths forming echo chambers. Placing a knot-laden cord under one head, you utter mil, meaning 1,000, and wait. The echo emerges a half-beat late, as though the stone puma is pondering your message before replying. You grin, stroking the cord, imagining 2 puma guardians trading imperial data by sonic stealth. Modern aside, you compare this to trying to discuss payroll over a spotty Zoom call, except here, corporate compliance rides on precise echoes instead of pixelated audio. Joke 3. You muse that if your boss tried that in the office, you'd all end up with tinnitus. You rise again, testing another spot where 2 ridges nearly touch, forming a long echo corridor. You whisper "Cetisa, bread ovens," pun intended, bread? Inca diets favored maize and quinoa, but let's roll with it, and the valley returns "Cetisa" in a hollow drawl. The sound travels nearly half a kilometer before fading, convincing you that even the most obscure terms could cross this link in the empire's acoustic chain. Mainstream fact: Inca quipucamayoc sometimes delivered oral addenda alongside quipu knots, calling out supplemental details that the chords couldn't capture, an early example of multimedia record-keeping blending tactile and oral channels. You nod at the synergy, thinking how few modern data systems honor both text and voice so harmoniously. You adjust your cloak as sunlight begins filtering through clouds, signaling mid-morning. You collect your quipu bundle with reverent care, ensuring the knots maintain their spacing instead of splaying across your palm. Mama Huayra stands, brushing dust from her own robe, and gestures down the trail. The valley has spoken, she says. Let us carry its echoes forward. You turn back, walking toward a narrow path carved into mossy rock. Each step feels lighter, buoyed by the valley's acoustics ringing in your ears. The quipu at your side seems to hum with possibility, as if each knot has gained a voice echoing through time. You step onto the trail, trailing echo pulses behind you like a colorful comet tail, ready to deliver whispers to the next relay. You follow Mama Huayra down a winding path where the forest canopy parts to reveal the towering walls of a stone temple, its broad steps streaked with sunrise and smoothed by centuries of sandals. The air here tastes of toasted maize and aromatic pine resin, mingling with faint notes of burning copal incense that drift from high alcoves where priests stand at attention. You step across a threshold framed by carved figures of jaguars and condors, feeling the weight of silent devotion settle around you, yet, just beyond the inner sanctum, you spy bundles of quipu hanging like ceremonial garlands. Inside, the high priest receives you with a solemn nod. He gestures toward a low altar strewn with golden goblets and ceramic bowls, each filled with offerings of corned beer, roasted potatoes, and small dyed pumpkins. At his feet lie quipu bundles tied with purple and white cords, the imperial colors reserved for sacred record keeping. You step closer, toes brushing cold flagstones, and notice the quipu cords loop deliberately into patterns that mirror the temple's geometric friezes. Mainstream fact: quipu were used in religious ceremonies to record offerings made to the sun god Inti, with special cords marked for priestly tributes and agricultural dedications during festivals like Inti Raymi. You reach out to touch a subsidiary cord braided in saffron yellow, supposedly counting the number of llama skins offered as temple drapes. The fibers feel surprisingly smooth, as though they've been polished by prayerful hands. Modern aside, it's like someone ran a super soft microfiber cloth over your spreadsheets before printing. The high priest, his voice low and rhythmic, chants a litany in Quechua, each phrase invoking mountains, rivers, and star clusters. You realize he's reciting the quipu's contents aloud, an oral complement to the tactile record. Fringe tidbit: some colonial observers wrote that quipu used in temples included tiny feathers woven into the knots to represent bird-shaped offerings, though no surviving examples have retained any organic inclusions. Historians still argue whether these feather markers formed part of an official ritual lexicon or if they were localized improvisations. You crouch beside a stone trough where a young acolyte places miniature clay jars of chicha in neat rows. Next to each row, he ties a slender quipu cord whose knots map the volume in each jar. You lean forward to watch the acolyte's fingers work, a long knot, then a figure eight, then 3 single knots, all moving with calm precision. Mainstream fact: in large storehouses called kolka, officials used quipu to track the distribution of foodstuffs, maize, quinoa, potatoes, and could quickly assess supplies for military garrisons or relief during poor harvests. You inhale the earthy scent of stored grain and wood smoke, the aroma almost like a rustic bakery crossed with a library of linen. You let your fingertips drift over a quipu hung on a peg, its cords arranged in a fan shape, each colored strand corresponding to a different product, one for salted potatoes, another for roasted kernels, a third for freeze-dried tuna. You pause, imagining how each knot represented a sack, a store, a promise of sustenance for thousands. Moving deeper into the temple's inner courtyard, you pass through a low archway into a sunlit yard paved with flagstones warm beneath your sandals. Here, a circle of wooden sills holds dozens of small quipu, each tied to tally the incense sticks burned the previous night. You catch a waft of sweet resin and remember the incense swirling in the apprenticeship shrine, call it not-sense synesthesia. Mama Huayra beckons you toward a long stone bench where another keeper stands beside a low wooden table. On it lies a richly decorated quipu with cords dyed in gradient bands from ochre to crimson, commissioned for a festival honoring the earth goddess Pachamama. The keeper invites you to untie the stopper knot and read the sequence, the number of baskets of coca leaves, the count of carved idols, and even the tally of embroidered tunics gifted by local artisans. Mainstream fact: ceremonial quipu often encoded multifaceted data, blending economic records with offerings lists and ritual schedules, allowing priests to plan complex religious ceremonies across multiple temple centers. You trace the colored chords with slow reverence, feeling as though each hue pulses with meaning. Fringe tidbit: local storytellers whisper that some priestly quipu included secret knots meant only for the Sapa Inca's eyes, encoded messages that foretold omens or personal prophecies, though no written Spanish account from colonial archives confirms their existence. Historians still argue whether quipu served as mystical oracles in addition to administrative tools. The keeper gestures to a pair of stone staircases descending from the courtyard to subterranean grain vaults. You follow, stepping down into a cool, dim chamber where rows of ceramic jars and woven baskets line niches carved into the walls. The air here is drier, dust motes dancing in slender shafts of light from tiny vent holes above. Beside each shelf, a quipu bundle hangs like an inventory tag, short cords for small jars, long bundles for bulk baskets. You reach out and hold one. The knots feel packed, rigid with tightly bound data. Modern aside, this subterranean storehouse feels like your refrigerator after you ignore takeout all week, organized to a fault, if only you could remember to eat the leftovers. You chuckle softly, surprising yourself with a genuine grin. A keeper explains that once a month, officials, sometimes numbering in the hundreds, gathered here to reconcile quipu inventories with physical stock, untying and retying cords as jars emptied or baskets refilled. You picture a communal ritual of numeric devotion, dozens of clerks kneeling in the vault, murmuring knot recitations in unison. Mainstream fact: these monthly inventories ensured food security and allowed the state to respond to famine or military needs swiftly, making the Inca logistical system remarkably resilient. You lean against a cool stone pillar, letting the stillness of the vault wash over you. The hush is punctuated only by the soft rustle of cotton cords and the faint drip of condensation from above. Fringe tidbit: a few ruin sites reveal quipu fragments deliberately cut and scattered, possibly discarded records after stores were audited, raising debates about the Inca practice of ritual data deletion versus simple disposal. Historians still argue whether quipu destruction marked the end of a record's life cycle or signaled a ceremonial renewal. Climbing back into the courtyard, you carry a short quipu sample gifted by the temple's high priest, a symbolic bundle recording today's grain offerings. You cradle it in your palm like a sacred scroll, feeling the weight of hundreds of meals counted and promised. The afternoon breeze flutters your cloak and rattles the hanging quipu like wind chimes in a monastery. You smile at Mama Huayra, thinking how these cords span the spectrum from divine ritual to everyday provisioning, sacred and secular woven together in cotton. As the sun dips toward late afternoon, painting temple stones in rosy hues, you secure the offering quipu in your pack. You step beyond the temple gates, the aroma of incense and grain lingering behind you, confident that quipu's dual role in ceremony and sustenance has woven a new layer of understanding into your journey. You slip into a low-ceilinged quipu training hall, its walls lined with woven tapestries dyed in muted reds and browns, a callback to the apprenticeship shrine where Mayu and Tupac first taught you knot basics. The air here is hushed, thick with expectancy, as a dozen quipucamayoc trainees kneel in 2 rows facing each other. You join the back row, quipu coiled gently at your side, and feel the weight of dozens of silent eyes on you. A single torch flickers at the far end, its flame so steady it seems to hold its breath along with the room. Your instructor, a stern keeper named Corey, raises his hand in a crisp signal, 0 sound. You bring your quipu forward, letting its cords fan out across your lap like an array of sleeping snakes. The texture of tightly spun cotton brushes your fingertips, reminding you of the midnight crafting circle where Nusta praised your first ply and prompted you to draft that Get Knotted marketing slogan. Tonight, there's no music or ceremony, only the soft rustle of fibers as each trainee prepares to pass a secret code to their partner without uttering a single word. Mainstream fact: by the late 15th century, the Inca established specialized quipu schools in Cusco, sometimes called houses of knots, where quipucamayocs trained in silent protocols, guaranteeing that imperial edicts remained confidential even if overheard. You imagine a modern corporate data center repurposed as a hushed meditation hall, far more appealing than fluorescent-lit cubicles and stale coffee breath. You glance at your partner, a poised woman named Suni whose braided hair echoes the neat rows of knots draped over her lap. She tilts her head, indicating readiness. You lock eyes, and with a subtle nod, you begin. Thread by thread, you lift the primary chord and whisper no words, instead tapping the first subsidiary chord twice, once for the category, twice for the value. The tap is soft, almost imperceptible, yet Suni's hand moves in sync, responding with a single tap on her primary chord. You feel the quipu pulse under your palm, a silent conversation unfurling like a shared secret. Fringe tidbit: some seasoned keepers swore they could encode messages scented with wild tobacco leaves, pressing the faint aroma into the fibers so that only intended recipients could sniff out the code, though no Spanish chronicler noted any surviving perfumed quipu. Historians still argue whether scented encoding was ever more than a whispered legend or a clever smokescreen against eavesdroppers. Your pulse quickens as you execute a series of rapid taps, 1, 2, 3 on a crimson chord, for gentle pinches on a black chord, each movement conveying a fragment of a tribute schedule. You remember the Chuzki relay, how a mistimed shout could lose a message to the valley's echo, but here, no echo can betray you. Modern aside, it's like communicating via Bluetooth Morse code, only without accidentally tweeting to the entire office. You imagine sending a happy birthday quipu to your friend, 10 taps on a yellow chord, accompanied by 14 on a red, then watching their confusion unfold live. Suni mirrors your sequence flawlessly, her fingers light as hummingbird wings. You sense camaraderie bridging the silence, a shared pride in mastering a language woven from cotton and touch. Behind you, the torch's flame flickers, casting knot-shaped shadows on the tapestry, an unintended visual cue that makes you grin, despite the stern atmosphere. Corey steps between rows, his robe brushing the stones with a soft swish. He pauses at each pair, observing finger movements with hawk-like focus. When he reaches you, you hold your breath, recalling how you flubbed figure eights in ceremony. But tonight, your knot stayed true, no corrections needed. Corey offers a barely perceptible nod, an ASMR-grade acknowledgement that sends a quiet thrill through you. Mainstream fact: silent quipu exchanges formed part of state security measures, keepers bound by oaths of confidentiality to carry sensitive information on troop movements or diplomatic envoys without risking leaks at public tambos. You can almost hear the mental clack of distant generals approving such discreet methods, and you're glad your office doesn't require you to swallow a literal bullet each time you route a memo. You shift your quipu to signal the end of the message, 3 soft taps in a descending rhythm. Suni echoes once, then touches her heart in a respectful gesture. The hall breathes, collectively releasing the tension held for the exercise. You allow yourself a soft exhale, the sound swallowed by the thick tapestries and stone floors. Fringe tidbit: a few quipu fragments unearthed near coastal shrines show minute red-dyed knots thought to signal urgent maritime dispatches, leading some to speculate that silent quipu couriers once relayed storm warnings to fishing fleets, though evidence remains scant. Historians still argue whether quipu ever served as emergency communication devices beyond administrative use. Modern aside, you think of how satisfying it would be to receive a silent "your report has been approved" quipu at your desk, instead of kayfabe email threads. You mentally draft a proposal for the Slack quipu integration. Imagine it: quipu send 325 on green chord and your channel vibrates in confusion. As the exercise ends, trainees rise, rolling their quipus with ritual precision and stowing them against their backs. The room buzzes with muted excitement, the kind born of triumph after silent collaboration. Corey calls for a debrief, no speeches, just a single, resonant clap on a wooden plank that fills the hall with a soft, satisfying tone. You find yourself smiling at the echo, a callback to the echoing valleys where voices once carried quipu whispers across Chuzki routes. You bow to Suni and the other trainees, feeling a warm glow of accomplishment seep into your limbs. The quipu at your side feels less like a record bundle now and more like a shared secret tucked against your heart. As you step out of the training hall into the crisp evening air, you flex your fingers, craving the tactile feedback of knot practice. Mainstream fact: after graduation, elite quipucamayocs often join diplomatic missions, carrying silent quipu codes that only their counterparts could decode, forming an unbreakable chain of trust across the empire. You inhale the scented breeze, imagining how those diplomatic knots reshaped alliances and avoided wars. Fringe tidbit: local tales hint that some quipu bearers carried hidden escape cords, extra knots that, when untied in the right sequence, revealed concealed maps etched into the primary cord beneath, though no such clandestine quipu has survived colonization's purges. Historians still argue whether covert mapping quipu were practical espionage tools or romantic post-colonial myths. You tuck the silent code quipu into your pack, the cords nestling against your ribs like a contented pet. The moonlight glints off your instructor's torch outside, and you recall Mama Huayra's lullaby greeting at the apprenticeship shrine. You press a hand to your chest, feeling the quipu's presence sinking with your heartbeat, a gentle reminder that even silence can speak volumes. You shoulder your pack and step onto the high ridge just as a low roll of thunder grumbles in the distance, the sky bruised with charcoal clouds that brood over jagged peaks. The wind gusts in your face, carrying stinging droplets of rain that hiss against your cloak's weave. Every breath tastes like cold iron, and your chest constricts in that familiar pinch, altitude reminding you it's boss here. You pause, pressing a hand to your chest, feeling your heartbeat thump like a frantic llama startled on a narrow ledge. Welcome to the perils on the passes, where survival hinges on knot mastery, careful footwork, and perhaps a dose of good luck. Your guide, Mama Huayra, glances at you with calm eyes and offers a handful of coca leaves wrapped in a faded cloth pouch. You chew them reluctantly, the bitter tang sliding across your tongue, and feel a slight tingle at your temples. You tighten your cloak and press on, rain plastering your hair to your forehead and making every knot on your quipu slippery beneath your fingers. The path narrows to a spine of rock, with a sheer drop on one side and a wall of jagged stones on the other. You steady yourself against the wall, palm flattening on wet rock, and brace for the next thunderclap. The air grows thinner, each inhalation a labor that leaves you lightheaded. You swallow hard, reminding yourself that thousands of Chuzki and keepers traverse these heights daily, though few had YouTube cameras to document their near falls. Modern aside, you consider how your Fitbit would describe this segment: extreme precipitation challenge, wet socks, shaky hands, 12,000 feet elevation, and shudder at the thought of achievement badges for surviving impromptu mountain monsoons. The path veers upward as the storm intensifies. You dig boots into a steep incline slick with mud, each step threatening to send you sliding backward. You curse under your breath, mindful of the vow not to use profanity, and grip your quipu bundle like a lifeline. Rainwater streams down the cords, distorting their colors, and you worry the knots might loosen under the deluge. Mama Huayra hums softly, her voice a lullaby in the tempest, reminding you of earlier chants in temple courtyard. That hum grounds you, steadying your nerves amid thunder and wind. Just when you think the storm can't grow more ferocious, a piercing scream fractures the roar of thunder. You freeze, heart hammering, and strain your ears. Off to your left, through sheets of rain, you glimpse a figure sprawled on a shelf-like path, arms flailing. A Chuzki, you realize, caught by a rockslide and injured. Your knuckles whiten on your quipu sack as you approach, each step a cautious negotiation with slippery flagstones. You kneel beside the runner, noting a gash on their forearm and a sheen of panic in their eyes. They clutch their quipu bundle protectively, as if shielding it from both bandits and the avalanche that felled them. You press your cloak over their shoulders, murmuring comfort in Quechua, what little you recall from apprenticeship. They nod, confusion and relief mingling, and you press a few more coca leaves into their trembling hand. Mainstream fact: Inca roads had tambos with attendants trained to treat injuries and stabilize messengers, but in remote high-altitude passes, help often arrived hours later, risking infection and worse. You realize how precarious this system truly was. You wrap a makeshift bandage from a spare cloth, knotting it snugly around the runner's arm with the same care you apply to quipu cords. Fringe tidbit: some keepers allegedly carried small doses of hallucinogenic San Pedro cactus extract to numb severe pain during emergencies, though most scholars dismiss such use as the exaggerated claims of colonial scribes. With the runner steadied, you both struggle to stand. The wind buffets you, urging caution, but there's no choice. The path behind is unstable, and there's no shelter ahead. You press a hand to the runner's shoulder and hoist them against your hip, securing their legs with your free arm. The added weight tugs on your back, making each step up the incline an act of will. You brief them, lean on me, count your steps aloud, 1, 2, 3, helps with focus. They murmur agreement, and you set off, boots clacking against wet stone. Every now and then, you pause to press the runner's quipu bundle against your chest, ensuring their knots stay intact even as straps loosen. You recall decree encoding challenge, how precise knot placement could change the fate of thousands, and you vow that no fumbled knot today will tarnish that legacy. A deep breath brings that adrenaline-slammed taste back to iron, spurring you onward. As you stagger forward, the path broadens into a rocky plateau where a skeletal shrine offers scant shelter. You scramble to its center, hauling the runner and yourself beneath an overhanging ledge. Rain pelts the stones, turning the shrine's carved reliefs into watery smudges. You find a small alcove behind a statue of Viracocha, the creator deity, and press your back against the cool stone. The runner sinks to their knees, resting their head on your shoulder, quipu bundle drooping like a drowsy pet. Mama Huayra emerges a moment later with her own bundle, stepping into the alcove with practiced ease. She lights a small clay lamp, its flame dancing like a firefly in the downpour, and offers a hot broth from a flask. You sip gratefully, feeling warmth blossom in your chest. The runner follows suit, eyes closing in relief as the liquid soothes both cold and pain. Modern aside, you imagine the Tambo staff back at Cusco prepping microwavable cup noodles. Nothing beats instant comfort like boiling water and mysterious flavor packets. You suppress a grin, mindful the runner might still be unconscious. The storm's roar persists, but inside this rocky cradle, you sense a fragile sanctuary, a momentary reprieve from quipu duties and the Empire's relentless demands. The runner stirs, murmuring thanks, and you nod, handing them back their quipu bundle. Their fingers trace the knots, clumsy, half-conscious gestures that speak volumes about their dedication. You pat their back, thinking how few modern offices require such life-or-death devotion to records. A lull in the thunder cues you to move. You help the runner to their feet, take up both quipu bundles, and guide them back onto the slick path. Together, you descend the ridge, each step laced with caution and camaraderie. The rain staccato on stone becomes a backdrop for whispered encouragements and steady breathing, the quipu cord swaying at your sides like faithful companions. The storm finally abates as you slip below the cloud line, exchanged for a gentle drizzle that mist-wakes the mountaintop meadow ahead. You set the runner on firmer ground near a grove of polylepis trees, where lantern-wielding Tambo's attendants await. You pass off both quipu bundles, carefully, reverently, and watch them disappear into a lit shelter. The rain-soaked morning light returns, painting mossy stones in soft greens and greys. You stand alone on the path, body shivering but spirit buoyed by triumph and relief. The perils of the passes have tested you, altitude, storm, and rumblings of bandits, yet you've carried those knots, and each other, through. You adjust your quipu bundle, now slightly damp but intact, and face the trail ahead, confident that no mountain trial can unravel the human threads woven into every cord. You settle on a mossy ledge as morning sun filters through red and gold lichen, your fingers brushing the quipu bundle resting against your thigh. The cords fan out like a painter's palette, fiery crimsons, mellow ochres, and deep ebony strands arranged in deliberate harmony. You inhale the faint tang of copper-rich soil carried on a breeze, and you feel the quipu pulse like a heartbeat under your palm. It's here, amid pine-scented air and the distant murmur of a tributary stream, that you finally unravel the hidden language of color. Your fingertips hover over a thick red cord that gleams like dried berry juice. Gently, you trace a series of overhand knots spaced evenly along its length. These are not arbitrary loops but a narrative of homes and harvests. Mainstream fact, in many imperial quipu, red cords denoted familial lineages or military quotas, sometimes both, linking households to tribute obligations or conscripted soldiers destined for the frontiers. You can almost hear the echoes of Chuzki announcing new Levi counts in echo-rich valleys, as you felt yourself tapping knots back. Next, your touch drifts to a golden-yellow cord braided into a subtle spiral. Its hue reminds you of toasted maize kernels laid out on sunlit terraces. As you follow the spiral, knots appear at regular intervals, each a tally of fields planted, stored, or redistributed. A fringe tidbit whispers through scholarly murmurings. Some villagers claim certain yellow cords were dyed with saffron-like tones from mountain marigolds, reserved for ritually significant crops, though no chemical analysis has definitively linked quipu dyes to that flower. Historians still argue whether these floral dyes signified regional vanity or held ceremony-driven importance. You pause, eyes closing as a pine needle droplet trickles down your neck, nature's quiet reminder of altitude. You lean back on your palms, letting the quipu rest, and envisage an Inca census officer in Cusco absorbing sun on a summer morning, quipu spread on a low stone bench like a data-driven tapestry. Modern aside, you imagine Excel would look a lot friendlier if its cells glowed in corn yellow instead of some sterile blue. Maybe you'd actually enjoy pivot tables. Bringing your attention to the third chord, a deep, velvety black, you wrinkle your nose at its inky softness. This strand carries an altogether different weight, funerary rites and ancestral counts. Mainstream fact: black chords in quipu often track death tolls, mourning offerings, or the number of llamas sacrificed in remembrance ceremonies, creating an administrative ledger of loss bound in cotton. You recall the hushed shrine, where whispered recitations marked not sequences as part of solemn rites. Black threads there would have resonated like a whispered elegy. A sudden gust rattles the surrounding trees, scattering a few loose fibers across your lap. You gather them with care, scoffing at your own notion that this quipu is just glorified yarn. Jokes sprinkle, frankly, knitting an empire census beats dropping your smartphone in a lake. You wouldn't dare call your IT department for a wet quipu recovery plan. You weave these stray strands back into the bundle, marveling at how forgiving cotton can be when you treat it like a delicate sculpture. You continue decoding. A slender green cord, almost hidden among bolder hues, seems to represent agricultural diversity: beans, potatoes, quinoa, though its knots are tiny and tightly packed. A pale blue strand nearby suggests irrigation measures or rainfall records, tying communities to seasonal cycles. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have identified up to 18 distinct quipu colors, ranging from white and purple to charcoal and tan, each category corresponding to census categories such as textiles, military strength, or grain stores. The quipu before you feels like a multispectral image of an empire's lifeblood. As you sort through colors, you notice patterns: red followed by yellow, then black, a sequence repeated 3 times, mirroring the empire's division into suyus. The first loop might tally families in the Chinque Suyu, the next in Anti-Suyu, the third in Kola Suyu. Fringe scholars propose that color sequences formed a mnemonic color code, allowing quipucamayocs to recite entire provincial reports without referring to numbers at all, a kind of chromatic shorthand. Historians still argue whether this color-coded geography was standardized across distant regions or adapted by local keepers to suit their own dialects of data. You pause for breath, literal and figurative, as your chest swells with pride at mastering these chromatic knots. A small chuckle escapes you. Who knew that colors could carry census data better than any bar chart? Modern aside, you reckon if PowerPoint slides flashed in quipu hues, you'd actually pay attention during budget meetings. Imagine slide 3, pixel-perfect purple equals 3,412 units. Your hand drifts back to the crimson chord. You untie a small stopper knot and weave in an extra loop, an addendum recording unexpected birthing figures in a new settlement. You whisper the number aloud: 18. The knot slides into place, marking a demographic surge you didn't spot in any text. Mainstream fact: quipucamayocs routinely added supplementary knots to record anomalies, births, deaths from rare illnesses, or even sudden temple donations, allowing quipu to evolve dynamically rather than remain static documents. The empowerment to update records on the fly must have felt revolutionary, like handing citizens both quill and parchment in the same breath. A bird caws overhead, and you glance skyward to see a condor circling the temple ruins below. You smile at the symbolism: the condor, messenger of the gods, and you, messenger of quipu secrets, both charting paths through sky and data. You tighten the new knot, careful not to disturb the color sequence, and slide the stopper knot back into place, humming a tune that mimics the valley echoes you once tapped out on stone. Your bundle now bears an extra loop, a hidden footnote in vibrant vermilion that only you will notice. You gather the cords into a neat coil, marveling at their chromatic choreography. Each thread adds a dimension: red for lineage and Levi, yellow for harvest and homage, black for remembrance, green for fields, blue for water. It's a living palette of governance, ritual, and community woven into a single tool. You rise, wind tousling your hair as you secure the quipu to your waist. The colors ripple against your side like a flag in slow motion. You feel connected to every keeper who ever decoded these hues under the sun or by torchlight, from the apprentice kneeling in a shrine to the master crossing a thunder-swept ridge. The hidden meanings now lie within your grasp, each knot and color a whisper from history's long woven into cotton. And as you step back onto the mountain path, the quipu's colors glinting in dawn light, you carry not just strands of data but a chromatic chorus of human lives, each hue a note in the empire's resonant harmony. You stride into the great plaza of Cusco, its massive stone-paved courtyard echoing with the shuffle of sandals and the murmur of officials in plumed headdresses. Every surface gleams in the highland sun, walls polished like obsidian mirrors, terraces rising in stepped grandeur toward the fortress palace where the Sapa Inca holds court. You clutch your quipu bundle against your chest, the cords humming with the weight of provincial reports and tribute tallies. The air carries the scent of roasted maize, dampened llama hides, and the sweet smoke of copal incense. It feels as though the entire empire exhaled when you passed through the city gates. Mainstream fact, under the reign of Pachacuti in the mid-15th century, Cusco was transformed into a ceremonial and administrative capital, with grand halls built for audiences where quipucamayocs presented bundles to record tribute, census figures, and diplomatic gifts. You recall how your own bundle's crimson and ochre cords once mapped distant highland herds, and now they must pass muster before the very heart of Inca power. You step onto a raised platform of polished granite, flanked by tasseled standards and rows of golden earspools worn by dignitaries. Heralds in bright tunics part the crowd in a hush, revealing the Sapa Inca seated beneath a canopy of gilded palm fronds. His cloaked in royal vicuna fleece, its softness rumored to require a dozen calloused quipucamayocs just to smooth each fringe. His obsidian eyes scan your approach with calm authority, and the plaza holds its breath, no bird dares break the silence. You kneel on a woven mat of llama wool, your quipu coiled neatly at your side. Two senior keepers step forward, each bearing smaller bundles for context, one tied in purple and white cords recording temple offerings, the other in indigo and charcoal mapping newly annexed valleys. They place these before the Sapa Inca's golden lap, and then silently step back, leaving you alone with the emperor's gaze. Your voice is level as you begin, mighty Inca. On behalf of the Kolasuyu provinces, I present tribute counts for this season. You lift your bundle and spread the cords before you, letting them fan out like a rainbow at your knees. The sunlight glints off colored fibers, reds deep as dried pomegranate, yellows bright as midday sun, blacks as shadow in a canyon. The cords seem to pulse, each knot a living testament to thousands of households and harvest cycles. Fringe tidbit, some chroniclers claimed quipu bundles destined for royal audiences were scented with rare orchid oils to heighten the emperor's sensory experience, though no surviving emperors have confirmed this aromatherapy, and no chemical traces have yet been identified. Historians still argue whether the Inca court indulged in aromatic quipu presentations or whether this is a later embellishment to glorify Sapa Inca luxury. You trace the primary cord with a fingertip, reciting each subsidiary cluster, 300 llamas in Ollantaytambo, 1,200 jars of chicha in Paisik, 800 textile parcels from Anta. Your voice carries across the plaza, crisp as the mountain air. You feel tiny beads of sweat at your hairline, tribute nerves manifesting like a child's first recital, but the cords anchor you, their familiar weight a reminder of hours spent knotting under torchlight. Modern aside, you imagine delivering this report over a shaky Zoom call, desperately hoping your Wi-Fi doesn't drop mid-knot. At least here, signal loss means a dropped llama count, not a frozen screen. A hush holds as you finish, and the Sapa Inca leans forward. He extends a slender finger tipped in gold and taps the red cord denoting llama tribute. This figure aligns with our own survey, he asks, voice soft but resonant. You nod, recalling decree exercise where you encoded 2,046 llamas. You clarify, yes, great sovereign, this knot cluster corresponds precisely to your master census. He taps again, this time on the ochre cord of maize counts. And the new settlement at Quillabamba shows unexpected surplus, he inquires. You gesture to a tight knot set you added last night under the pine-scented ledge. An anomaly of 18 extra fields providing enough surplus for festival reserves. The Emperor's gaze flicks to the fringe of your bundle, where the tiny vermilion loop glints like a secret handshake. Jokes hum beneath your composure. You considered slipping in a knot for accidental alpaca party, but divine oversight made you err on the side of bureaucratic precision. You tighten your grip on the cords, daring yourself not to laugh at the mental image of regal alpacas dancing in gold headdresses. The Sapa Inca nods, and you sense approval ripple through his assembly. He reaches for a feather-tipped stylus carved from condor quill and touches a cluster of knots, serving both as seal and correction tool. A scholar at his side murmurs adjustments, plus for baskets of coca leaf, or subtract 2 llama skins reserved for royal robes, and the stylus flits from cord to cord like a conductor's baton. Mainstream fact: royal audiences often included live adjustments to quipu bundles, creating a dynamic record that could incorporate last-minute tribute or festival allocations before final wrapping. You watch as the stylus adds a tiny twist to one cactus green strand, then steps back. The Sapa Inca's chin rises, and he addresses you directly. Your quipu service proves accurate and timely. May your cords guide the empire to further prosperity. His words echo like the valley's amphitheater, and the plaza exhales a collective sigh of admiration. Fringe tidbit: rumor says that exceptional quipucamayocs were sometimes gifted jeweled pendants woven into their final bundles, a mark of emperor's favor that doubled as a discreet circular safe. Historians still argue whether such jeweled quipu attachments were widespread honors or isolated legends inflating quipucamayoc prestige. You rise, folding the cords gently and securing the stopper knot. A low drum taps 3 times, a signal that the audience is concluded. You bow respectfully, stepping back from the platform as attendants sweep forward to collect the bundles. The quipu you presented will be curated in the Coricancha treasury alongside golden offerings and painted banners, a testament to your skill and the empire's order. Modern aside, you imagine your dashboards archived in a corporate intranet. No golden shrines, just server farms humming under air conditioning. You trade the dull hum of fans for this court's palm-front canopy and incense haze any day. As you exit the plaza, high officials murmur praise, some in Quechua, others in Aymara, each referencing the gleam of your colored cords. A courtesan muses that only the emperor's feathers rival the radiance of your bundle. You smile inwardly. Never has data presentation earned such floral flattery. You cross back through Cusco's labyrinth of stone streets, quipu safely stowed once more. Behind you, the palace gates close with a resonant clang, a final nod to the authority your knots upheld. You inhale deeply, tasting maize smoke and mountain breeze, and recognize that today your quipu served not just as record but as bridge between emperor and provinces. And as the sun's warmth shifts toward afternoon, you sense that each knot you tied and each bundle you presented wove you deeper into the empire's living tapestry, a reminder that in Cusco's grand halls, history itself hinges on the soft pull of cotton cords. You settle into a creaky wooden chair in a sunlit seminar room lined with glass cases housing faded quipu fragments. The air smells faintly of old paper and polished oak, mingling with the distant hum of traffic from Lima's streets. Around you, scholars sift through notebooks and digital tablets, there murmurs a soft undercurrent beneath the quiet flicker of overhead projectors. You clutch your own quipu bundle, its colored cords a living link to the debates playing out here, knots in cotton, arguments in ink. A bespectacled historian leans forward, tapping a pointer against a projection of a quipu he claims tells the story of a lost Inca general's journey. You study the image, cords looped into spirals that resemble winding mountain paths. Mainstream fact: roughly 600 quipu are known to survive today in museums and archives, though only a fraction have been fully analyzed, leaving much of the empire's record system tantalizingly incomplete. You recall tracing those same spirals on a torchlit shrine wall, realizing that each knot carried more potential than any sterile spreadsheet. Around the table, voices rise in polite contention. One scholar argues that certain quipu bundles used binary-like knot patterns to denote names and events, a precursor to syllabic writing. Another insists those patterns merely reflect accounting conventions, cautioning against romanticizing numeric ledgers as narrative texts. Historians still argue whether quipu functioned as a true writing system or remained bound to numbers alone. You tap your primary chord gently, imagining it whispering back through cotton that the truth probably lies somewhere in between. You lean back, finger brushing a vivid crimson strand. The knot you tied for supplemental births in stands out among its neighbors, a clandestine footnote in vermilion. That loop feels slyly triumphant here, reminding you that personal annotations likely existed alongside state records. Fringe tidbit: local oral traditions claim Quipu keepers composed epic poems in knot form, love ballads and heroic sagas passed down by touch, though no Quipu fragment has yielded such a narrative, and skeptics suspect those tales grew from post-colonial yearning for lost literatures. A young anthropologist passes you a steaming cup of coca tea, its aroma leafy and slightly nutty. You sip, grateful for the mild stimulant, and watch as a researcher highlights a faded pale yellow chord on a high-resolution scan. Notice the uneven dye, she murmurs. That inconsistency might signify a break in the storyline, an editorial insert, if you will. You nod, recalling the offshade strand from midnight crafting, and wonder how many subtle cues remain hidden from modern eyes. The projector clicks to a close-up of another Quipu, this one featuring small pendants of carved bone. The presenter speculates they mark seasonal festivals, a kind of visual timeline woven in cotton and ivory. The theory ignites a ripple of excitement. If true, Quipu could encode rituals alongside census counts, blurring the line between ledger and law. A soft chuckle escapes you as you imagine accountants in three-piece suits replacing spreadsheets with bone-braced cord bundles. Talk about a dress code upgrade. Debate chakra shifts to methodological rigor. One senior professor warns that experimental knot reading can impose patterns that aren't there, urging reliance on contemporaneous chronicles and careful chemical dye analysis. Mainstream fact: recent spectrographic studies have identified trace minerals in Quipu dyes, confirming the use of cochineal, indigo, and ochre, but color alone doesn't translate to specific categories without contextual records. You imagine a lab coat wearing quipucamayoc measuring pigment density, an image so delightfully absurd it almost distracts you from the room's tension. The discussion veers into digital humanities. A coder describes a new algorithm designed to cluster knot types and colors, hoping to map geographic Quipu dialects. You envision your own Quipu coded into a JavaScript array, knots as elements, chords as object properties, then displayed in an interactive web app. The idea makes you smile. At least here, someone's trying to give knots the high-tech platform they deserve, rather than gathering dust in a glass case. You tilt your head as a visiting scholar invokes Francisco de Toledo's 16th-century edict ordering Quipu destruction, an attempt to erase indigenous records. Yet some Quipu survived by being hidden in sync with clandestine ceremonies. Historians still argue whether clandestine Quipu kept alive oral histories or served purely pragmatic accounting needs. You remember the tale from hidden feather markers and wonder if those secret embellishments were coded bequests to future generations. A hush falls as the professor who opened the session poses a final question: can we ever truly read Quipu without a living tradition to guide interpretation? You feel a gentle thrill at the room's shared humility, an admission that, despite centuries of study, Quipu retain an aura of mystery that resists full decoding. You glance at your bundle, its knotted loops offering no easy answers but whispering of lives lived and counted in silence. Your eyes drift to a glass display behind you where a Quipu fragment rests on velvet. A tiny label notes, provenance uncertain. You shiver at the fragility of that cotton strand, surviving plagues, conquests, humidity, and neglect. It reminds you of the apprentices, fingers trembling over first knots, and the chusky risking storms. Every chord you've touched since feels like a thread in a vast tapestry that remains unfinished. You sip the last of your coca tea, its warmth seeping into your chest, and set the cup on a stack of journal articles bookmarked to distraction. A ripple of laughter spreads through the group as someone mentions their algorithm mistook a decorative fringe for a missing chord, data science's version of tripping over your own shoelace. You grin, at least misreading a fringe costs fewer llamas than misplacing a census knot. The seminar wraps up with promises of collaborative fieldwork in the Andes, plans to unearth new Quipu bundles, record living traditions among remote communities, and apply multispectral imaging to faded chords. Historians still argue whether such technological interventions will illuminate Quipu's narrative power or simply digitize an incomplete record. You gather your notes, careful not to tangle your own quipu cords in the process. As you rise, you feel a soft connection to every scholar who's peered at these knotted relics, driven by equal parts curiosity and reverence. The room's fluorescent lights feel too bright after dawn spent under pine branches and torchlight, yet the intellectual glow here warms you just as gently. You tuck your quipu bundle into your bag, its colors dimmed by indoor light but vibrant in your memory, and step out into the corridor, ready to carry the debate and the knots forward into new discoveries. You slip through a shattered wooden gate into a deserted quipu storage hall, where alcoves once crammed with colored bundles now stand emptier than a festival plaza at siesta. The scent of charred cotton still lingers, smoky, acrid, and almost reverent in its warning. You watch Spanish soldiers in tarnished breastplates thrust flaming torches into stacks of quipu, cords hissing and curling into blackened curls. Smoke coils upward in lazy spirals, carrying whispers of every census count, tribute tally, and sacred offering that ever rested in these loops. Your heart thumps against your ribs like a frantic condor caged beneath a soldier's boot. You duck behind a charcoal-stained pillar, toes pressing into dust scattered with burnt fragments of dyed fibers, ruby reds, saffron yellows, ebony blacks now warped beyond recognition. A soldier stomps past, boot crunching the remnants of what was once a living record of millions. You taste soot on your tongue and remind yourself to breathe through your mouth instead of risking a lungful of quipu ash. Mainstream fact: in 1570, Viceroy Francisco de Toledo issued decrees ordering the destruction of quipu as part of a campaign to dismantle Inca administrative structures, mandating that all bundles be burned and surviving keepers baptized or executed. You imagine the imperial edict stamped in red wax, each order severing cotton threads that for centuries wove provinces into a united whole. As the flames dance, you slip forward, weaving between upended crates and smoldering timbers. A soft metallic clang echoes when you accidentally nudge a fallen stylus, once used to seal knots, now twisted under a soldier's heel. You stoop to retrieve it, fingertips brushing the scorched metal, and feel the weight of lost knowledge pressing into your palm like a cold confession. Beyond the hall, you glimpse a cluster of keepers forced to kneel in the dust. Their robes, once bright with dye residue, lie singed and faded. A conquistador methodically binds their hands, then slaps the nearest keeper's face when he offers no confession. You feel a surge of protective fury and remind yourself to keep your cloak drawn and your head down. Modern aside, you think how awkward it would be to request "please return my bundles before incineration" in the brutal etiquette of colonial conquest. A fringe tidbit drifts through your mind: some villagers buried quipu deep in cave altars, wrapping bundles in llama-wool shrouds to hide them from Spanish patrols, though few of these clandestine caches have ever been documented or unearthed. Historians still argue whether quipu survival hinged on mass burials in mountain caverns or on covert transmission of knot lore through secret apprenticeships. You creep along a smoke-streaked corridor toward the main plaza, where wooden scaffolds now serve as pyres for thousands of quipu. Each bundle goes up in curls of flame, knots unraveling into embers that drift skyward like ghostly fireflies. You pause behind a shattered altar, watching colored cords twitch against the fire's glow, one last flicker of cotton courage before surrendering to ash. Your fingertips graze the edge of a fallen cord dyed deep crimson. You lift it and examine a lingering knot, its shape still intact despite the scorch marks. You hold it against your chest, feeling the heat sink through your tunic. This fragment is a lifeline, a single voice from a choir silenced by steel and decree. You recall where quipu bound provinces to mercy and favor. Now, those same cords ignite like traitors in Spanish eyes, their loops redefined as pagan relics. The plaza's cobblestones glimmer with burning sap and quipu tar, turning bright stones into a wicked mosaic of conquest. A veteran keeper, bleached of color and standing spectral in the smoke, catches your eye. He gestures weakly, then crumbles onto his knees as a soldier's boot sends him sprawling. You grit your teeth and sling him your cloak, pressing it into his trembling hands. He offers a silent nod, eyes brimming with sorrow and defiance. You whisper, "We remember," though you're not sure if he hears. Mainstream fact: Spanish chroniclers noted that despite official bans, many quipucamayocs continued secret record-keeping in remote highland hamlets, using simple cotton strands hidden within everyday textiles, an act of cultural resistance that kept oral translations alive for future generations. You imagine tiny knots woven into the hems of ponchos and shawls, delivering census updates one subtle pleat at a time. You edge toward a ruined storehouse where wafts of charred grain mix with quipu smoke. The walls here still bear faded glyphs, the only markers of a system that once flowed through every crack and corridor. You press your palm to the cold stone, tracing a carved niche where cords once hung like pendants of power. Fringe tidbit: rumor persists that a last, secretive council of quipucamayocs convened in a hidden forest grove to pass on cryptic knot techniques. Some say they even encoded prophecies of colonial downfall into their final bundles. No written Spanish account confirms these meetings, and no archaeological evidence has yet surfaced. Historians still argue whether such clandestine councils existed or whether they're simply the stuff of post-colonial myth-making. You exhale, smoke curling around your lips like a ghostly breath. The plaza is nearly empty now, smoke dissipating into an overcast sky. You scan for Mama Huayra, but she's nowhere to be seen, perhaps leading survivors into the surrounding hills. You slip away before the next patrol rounds the corner, clutching the scorched cord to your chest. Modern aside, you reflect on the irony that today's data centers burn through terabytes in seconds, yet somehow seem less vulnerable than these humble cotton bundles ever were. You suppress a crooked smile at the absurdity, a hard lesson in scale and fragility. As you slip into a narrow alley flanked by adobe walls, you feel a tremor beneath your feet, perhaps a distant quake, or the earth's lament for the records lost. You steady yourself against a jagged rock face, the charred cord warm against your palm, and whisper its meaning aloud: 1,000 llamas, 300 jars of maize, 14 temple offerings. Your voice sounds small in the hushed street, as though the world itself has drawn its breath in and is holding it. You repeat the knot sequence softly, letting the cord's memory fill the empty spaces left by flame. Each murmured number reanimates the bundle, stitching together lives erased by colonial decree. You press the fragment to your heart, aware that these loops now carry a new purpose, the revival of a vanished archive. Your fingers trace the knots, each a promise to remember, each a vow to pass on the code. The burden is heavy, yet it beats with the same steady rhythm that once drove Chusky across mountain ridges. A stray breeze rustles a torn banner overhead, tattered red cloth fluttering like a wounded flag. You tuck the charred strand into your pack and step into a side passage that leads uphill toward the quiet reach of forgotten quipucamayocs' hideouts. Behind you, the plaza smolders, a stark testament to power's ability to erase. But in your hands, a single knot remains intact, a beacon whispering that history can never be fully consumed by flame. You step down from the mountain trail into a quiet clearing where a modern research outpost perches on weathered stone foundations, mismatched solar panels humming softly, satellite dishes scanning the sky like curious birds. You pause, brushing a stray lock of hair from your face, as you lay your final quipu bundle on a smooth wooden table beside laptops and notebooks scattered with sticky tabs. The midday light slants through mesh screens, illuminating the faded cotton cords and vibrant color sequences you once carried across ridge lines. It feels surreal, centuries of whispered knots, echoed chants, and stolen bundles condensed into this single moment, where ancient memory meets digital archive. Your fingertips trace the primary chord, still warm from your journey, and you recall each echo valley, temple courtyard, echoing shrine, and thunder-lashed ridge, all now catalogued in your mind like a living map. A researcher approaches and lifts the quipu into a 3D scanner, its lasers crisscrossing chords in a silent ballet of photons. Mainstream fact: since 2003, the Harvard Quipu Database Project has digitized hundreds of quipu, aiming to preserve their patterns and color data for global study, though only a fraction of known bundles have been scanned to date. You watch the machine's glow reflect off your knotted loops, imagining how tomorrow someone halfway around the world might explore these same chords on a tablet. Behind you, a curator unrolls a poster illustrating quipu's adaptation in Andean textiles, shawls, belts, even modern fashion accessories echoing the knot motifs you mastered under torchlight. Fringe tidbit: a few avant-garde designers have reportedly woven quipu-inspired patterns into haute couture gowns, branding them as the data couture, though critics dismiss it as gimmickry lacking cultural context. Historians still argue whether such contemporary appropriations honor quipu's heritage or risk trivializing a sacred system. You inhale the scent of aged cotton mingled with electronics, an oddly comforting perfume of continuity and change. Outside, through a screened window, you hear a soft breeze stirring polylepis branches, as if the mountains themselves whisper approval. You uncoil the cords and drape them gently over a mannequin's shoulder in the museum's exhibit, an installation titled Threads of Memory. A label nearby reads, Quipu, 15th to 16th century, cotton, natural dyes. You imagine visitors craning their necks, curiosity lighting their faces as they ponder what lives and stories these knots encode. Modern aside, you consider how today's data lives in invisible clouds, yet Quipu's tangible presence feels more real, more human, something you can touch, smell, and almost hear as its colors catch the light. You smile at the thought that a simple cotton cord contains more nuance than many spreadsheet macros you've encountered. A small group of local students files in, eyes widening when they see the Quipu. You kneel to their level, inviting them to trace the knots under supervision, though gloves prohibit direct contact. You describe how red cords once tallied llama herds, yellow marked maize yields, and black recorded solemn remembrances. One child gasps at the idea that numbers could wear color like clothing. You sense excitement ripple through the room. Quipu's magic endures. Mainstream fact: Quipu training regimens historically lasted up to 5 years for quipucamayocs, yet modern workshops teach not basics in hours, raising debates about authenticity and depth. Historians still argue whether condensed training can truly convey the system's cultural resonance or if it reduces Quipu to mere curiosities. You chuckle softly, recalling your own apprentice days when every knot carried weightier stakes than any classroom exercise. You step back and survey the exhibit, rows of glass cases housing Quipu fragments rescued from colonial destruction, digital touchscreens illustrating knot types, and a video loop featuring Chuzki reenactments, actors sprinting across replica ridges with colorful bundles. The atmosphere hums with reverence and wonder. You sense that Quipu's story remains incomplete, a living narrative still being woven by scholars, artisans, and curious minds alike. A colleague taps you on the shoulder, pointing to an upcoming symposium titled Quipu Beyond Code, where experts will debate narrative interpretations versus purely numerical readings. Fringe tidbit: rumor has it a keynote speaker will present a Quipu purportedly encoding a 16th century love poem, though no peer-reviewed confirmation exists. Historians still argue whether Quipu ever conveyed poetic verse or remained rooted in administration. You step outside into crisp Andean air, the collection buildings hum fading behind you. Mountains loom in the distance, their jagged ridges reminding you of every pass you crossed. You hold the Quipu bundle to your chest, feeling its subtle warmth, an echo of human hands that knotted these cords long before ink and paper arrived. You realize that Quipu's true legacy lies not in decoded numbers alone but in the hands that tied and read them, in the voices that accompanied their whispers, and in the resilience that kept knots alive through conquest. As you gaze toward twilight's first glow on distant peaks, you murmur to the Quipu, your story continues. The breeze tousles cords against your side like an answering sigh. You turn toward the trail leading back to a small research lodge, ready to rest but knowing the journey of discovery that Quipu invites will never truly end. Your eyelids feel heavy now, each blink a soft invitation to drift, as the day's research fades into memory. The air here is cool and calm, scented lightly by mountain breezes and the faint whisper of cotton fibers. No devices hum, no crowds murmur, only the gentle rustle of Quipu cords as they rest against your palm, a tactile lullaby of human ingenuity and resilience. Allow your breath to slow, each inhalation melting tension, each exhalation washing away the day's noise. Picture those vibrant strands, reds, yellows, blacks, greens, settling into gentle loops, like colorful ripples in a still pond, each knot a heartbeat inhaled and released. Imagine the hush of apprentice shrines, the echoing valleys that carried whispered knots, and the warm glow of lamplit temple chambers, all folding inward into a single, silent pulse. You rest in the knowledge that Quipu survive in cotton and code, in hearts and minds, bridging centuries with their quiet eloquence. Any questions will wait until morning. For now, you are cocooned in history's soft embrace, where every loop and twist whispers remember me. Now, as darkness settles beyond the window, allow the story's final chords to unwind. Feel your body sinking into the mattress, supported by layers of experience you've woven tonight. Let the rhythm of your heart align with the steady knot of calm in your chest. Drift beyond the lines of time, carried by the steady murmur of wind-whispered cotton, until dreams carry you across ridges and through echoing passages of memory.